Hello everybody, this is Marian Popanga and currently we'll be starting a presentation regarding DataArchitect. This is our first presentation from a series of a few presentations targeting the features and all the aspects of our product. Currently the release is 4.3 and it has many new features that we want to show it to you, but this presentation will mostly cover the basic features of the product. Let's start with the installation procedure. We will open the web browser and let's go to the website from where we can download the product. Let's write the byte anywhere /demo website, and if you already have been registered to our website, you can directly log in and you will have access to the software. If not, let's go back to the previous screen. You can see you have to register first and validate your account in order to have access to the products, or even if you have already been registered and you lost the password, you can recover it from these two buttons. Now let's go again to the website. If you are a registered customer, you can use the downloads link, and once you use that, you will have access to all the products available to your account. That's used for the customer who have purchased the products, and here is the list that you have access. If not, you can go to the demo folder and you will see all the products that are available for you to download. Support packages, data viewer. For instance, each one has a readme where you can find the details about any other software that needs to be installed. The same you will see for DataArchitect, and all the products you'll have similar readme files. Let's choose the DataArchitect for 64-bit now. Right here we will start downloading it, and we will install this software. Let's open the let's close first the web browser now that we have downloaded, and let's navigate to the download location. Now we can open the installer and start installing the product, and after that we can even delete the installer because we won't need it anymore. Let's execute the installer. We can see in the first screen all the readme info for the product, all the features in the current release 4.3, and also all the features that are available since the previous versions up to the first version. You can navigate to the next page, and for instance, if you want to change the destination path, you can do that. If not, the default path is fine. You can go ahead and install the product. The installation should be very short, and once the product will be installed, you should see a folder created on the program files, and also you'll have shortcuts created on the desktop. Now let's delete the installer that we used to install the software. this is not needed for now, and we can clean it up. Okay, and you see on the screen it's already here, the shortcut for DataArchitect. You should double click on it and the product will already getting open if you want to start it from this link. Also, if you go on the program files, you can find the installation folder in there under the Byte Anywhere logo. Let's scroll to it. It's right here. You can see it here, and the product DataArchitect under the logo. And here you can see we have the product, the documentation, the example, even the SQL. And we can open, let's say, the documentation. This one is very easy to use, and you can scroll to all the features that the product has and have an understanding of how the product is actually working. It's very easy to use and very useful to go through all the features that the product has. Now let's close it and let's go again to the DataArchitect installation folder. In the start menu, in the program files, and we can choose the examples folder to see all the examples that are already installed with the software. Okay, let's choose the examples folder. Here you can see we have diagrams, logical models, physical models, or different, the workspace and the project. Physical model in this release contains all the supported databases. For each of them we have included sample models that you can use and modify for different projects that you may have. Let's pick a logical model and double click on it. This should automatically open with the product. Let's pick the cells and see how it's getting open. Choose later in the first screen if you don't want to buy it straight away, and the model should getting open inside the DataArchitect. You can see all the objects inside it, and you can start already use the model. Now let's remove it, for instance, and close the product and exit the product. The product will ask if we want to save something. We choose to not save anything, and after that the product will exit. Now let's close this window and let's start again the product, then have some real connection to some real database, and to see how we can actually start using it for queries and creating the diagrams. We can use the shortcut from the screen that we already saw that it's created on the desktop. We can double click on it and the product will getting open. Let's start the product again and see how we can create a new project and query some data from inside it. Okay, let's hit the button later, and now let's go to the menu, new, and let's create here you can see all the models that are already available. In the demo version you have all the plugins available. In the commercial version only the open source ones are available. Once we hit a new project, we can fill the name of the project that we want. Let's write here a name for this project. Oh, first I have to change the default encoding for the Windows. Let's say MySQL, and let's choose the DSN for this connection. It will be a Unicode database. We can fill in the username, the password, and after that we can hit OK, and you can see that's the project that we already created. It's on the here, and we can right click on it and we can connect to the database. If the user and password are correct, it should allow us to connect to the database instance. If not, message error will be prompted, and we can see what's the problem and correct it. Write the correct username or password or even DSN and hit the correct button again once we correct the problems that we saw in the error. We saw that the project is connected to the database. If we right click on it or hit new, you can create different objects inside the project. And let's create an SQL editor for start. Let's query some data from this target MySQL databases to see how it's actually working. Show table should do this thing. We see the button execute and we can query all the data. Now we can query the tables directly from this button on the application itself, or all the views from the remote target without actually knowing the syntax about how to query the tables specifically on the target database. We can query, for instance, a certain table, and if we highlight it, we execute just this particular query, and we see all the results right here. Now if we highlight the table itself, we can, for instance, see all the columns in the table by hitting this button on the toolbar with all the properties for the columns in this table. All indexes, if the table has any indexes, foreign keys, primary keys, and so all the other objects that are even the data types of the remote database, which can be very useful. Or we can open the ODBC administrator depending on which platform we are running the DataArchitect. In here being Windows, that's the default administration of application, but on Linux or Unix you can have the Unix ODBC or IODBC manager and so on. Now let's create a physical model. For this case we'll choose the MySQL physical model to be created inside this project. Once we select it, we can click OK, and the dialog where we can fill in the properties for this physical model, it shows up. You can fill the name, author, the version. We can even see here the data types available in this particular physical model. Once we hit OK, it's already created. we can go into menu and start reverse engineering the objects, and we can select the tables that we want. Let's choose all the tables from some database, all the views or certain views. We have one view, one procedure, functions. Yes, we have some. No triggers. Okay, once we select those objects, reverse engineer process will start, and we can see all the objects already being in our interface. Now what we can do is to create an SQL script with the drop or create of all the objects that we can select or want in that script from the objects that are already imported in the project. Let's select both drop and create, and we can see here the SQL is created and all the objects being created, and you can save the script or execute any parts of it by selecting, highlighting certain parts of it on the remote database. And you can see under the MySQL project all the two editors that we have created, the two scripts and the physical model. Now let's create another project for a different database. And let's create a new project, give it a different name. Let's suppose it's PostgreSQL, and let's choose the DSN for this database. Okay, if the password is already available and the username, it will be already filled in. We see the project created on the list box, and now we can go and select it, right click, and again as with the previous one, we can connect. If everything is, all the data already filled in by default is correctly, it will connect. We see everything is fine. Now we can select it again if it's not selected, and right click on it, and we can create some objects inside it, the same objects that we saw before. Let's choose the SQL Editor for start to query some data on this target database. Let's query some system tables from the PostgreSQL database, and let's see the results. Hit execute button. Here we see the results, and we can also see that we have a stop button. If we want the query to be stopped, we have an execute to file, fetch all pages, fetch next pages, depending on how many data we want to fetch in the current page. You see that if you have more data, it will already fill in here. If we want to grab all the pages, all the data from the remote tables are brought in, and the button will not show up as active. This table has 73 rows. We can double check that info to see if it's actually correct. Let's select count from the target database to see if it matches the results. Let's execute it. It's 73, so our previous results are correct. Now let's assume that we want the query to be executed to a certain file because we want to use it for a different application. We have the execute to file button, and once we hit that, a dialog will be getting open to save the file name, and all the data from our query will get executed through that file. Let's go here on the desktop and let's use a name. The files are tab separated spaces, so this type of files can be very easily imported in any third-party application like Excel or Word or whatever we want to use. Let's minimize this application and see our result. The result we choose to be created on the desktop, so we should see the file created on the desktop. Let's go to it and try to open it and see what was created inside it, and if the results are actually correct. We can select it and we can choose a certain editor to be open with. Let's do that and see the content of this file. We can choose from the open with the WordPad, and we can see here all the tab separated lines and columns included in this file, so it's very good. Everything looks fine. Now we can close it and we can go back to the DataArchitect application so we can continue with our presentation. Also, we can delete this file if we are not interested anymore in using it. You can just select it and delete the file. At this point we won't need it. Okay, let's delete the file for now. And now let's open again the application and let's continue. Now for the same project, let's create a new physical model that is related to this project. So that's the PostgreSQL model. We select it and hit OK. And once we do that, the dialog with the physical model will be opened in our interface. We can see that the same, we can change the properties of the physical model. We can put a name, database name that we are working with. We can see the grammar with all the database that are already available in this model. Now let's go again to the database menu to reverse engineer this particular database. We see all the objects that are available in this database from which we can select particular objects. Let's select our tables, some views, functions, sequences we have, yes. Let's select some triggers. And let's go to the domains and let's select all the domains. The domains, if you have, are critical to have the database tables created properly in case those domains are used in certain tables. You see here that all our objects are bringing to the interface, and we can start adding some data, editing the objects, dropping, do all kinds of operations to the database, to the model itself. We can open the physical model that we have just created, and under this list box we can see all the various objects that we brought in. For instance, the triggers are here. We can see all the properties for a trigger, including the definition, the preview, all the other options or notes for this object. Each of these tabs has the properties for the trigger objects. Here we can see all the SQL for the triggers. Now let's try to create a logical model from this physical model. A logical model will be used as a base to create different types of physical models. Once we have started to design some databases, we can go further from a specific logical model and implement the model in different other physical models. And we can go back from the physical model to the logical model, back and forth, depending on what we need at a certain moment. And we can see that's very easy to be done. We have the logical model already created. If we go back on the tab that we created before with the PostgreSQL physical model, let's say we want to import some tables from the other connection, from the MySQL. We have to have at least 2 connections in order to be able to import data across databases. The major constraint is that the table and the source and the destination have to match. Here we can select from MySQL some tables, pick up the PostgreSQL target, and here some table. If the tables in source and the destinations match and we hit OK, the data is imported from the source to the target. So this feature can be also very useful if you want to migrate some data across different databases or operating systems and things like that. Now let's assume we want to create some additional objects in this physical model. We select from the toolbar the physical model and let's choose a table. The table objects, it will be highlighted once we click on it, and we can create tables inside the physical model. We start to create one table by dragging inside the view, dragging the cursor. Let's create another one. Once we have done all the objects that we want for this type, we have to go on the menu and hit the arrow button in order to stop creating the table object. The same is done for all the other objects that we need. Once we do that, we can select the object and hit its properties, move it or delete it or select it. If we keep pressing the control, we can select multiple objects in the interface and work with multiple objects like deleting or so on. If the current object is beneath us, we can remove it as we do now. If the other object is already selected, as we see, and there are no objects below us, and we can delete it from this menu. Now, once we deleted both objects, we see we can go to the toolbar and we have a button called undo, and this will recreate previous objects that were deleted. Let's say you do a mistake and you delete some important tables that were already created. Undo will allow you to recreate those objects. Also, there is this redo, which will go back again and redeletes the object as in the previous state. So undo, redo will go back and forth between those two kind of operations. Now we can, let's say we want to delete the first project that we created. We want to remove it. We are asked to save. We decide if we want to be saved or let's say we want to lose the changes. we can do the same for the second project. We can even save certain parts of a project, like a certain model, physical or logical model, or even the SQL model. Or we can save the entire workspace that we have beneath us. The entire workspace is composed by all the projects with their components inside the application. Since so far we are not interested to save them, we can just remove it without saving and lose changes. Now we can close the application. This is our first lesson of understanding the DataArchitect version 40, but this presentation also applies to previous version. Thank you very much for watching us, and for any question please don't hesitate to mail us at office@byteanywhere.com or use our forum at byteanywhere.com, where we can put any questions that you may have regarding the products or any SQL functionality in the databases or Linux, Unix database software that you may have. Thank you for watching. This is Marian Popanga, software architect at byteanywhere.com. Thank you for watching our presentation.